Miro in New Japan Pro Wrestling. There's been a lot of talk about Miro, the former WWE superstar Rusev. Of course, he recently joined AEW Dynamite, made his debut on Dynamite a couple of weeks ago. But now there's a lot of talk, obviously, with the G1 starting up this week and with New Japan. And there's been a lot of talk that Miro could soon be heading to New Japan, or at least he has the option to in the near future. Now, the new AEW wrestler, formerly known as Rusev, is going to be with the company for the long haul. There were details about Miro's contract with AEW that have been revealed. According to the guys over at Fightful on Fightful Select, their Patreon service, the deal has been in works between Miro and AEW for a while. It doesn't seem like it's going to be a one-shot deal, and it's a long-term contract with the possibility of it being even longer. The following is a statement directly released by Fightful that gives a further insight on Miro's contract status with AEW. It said, quote, AEW sources have confirmed that Miro, the former Rusev, does have a contract with the company. Fightful has learned that talks have been ongoing for a while, and we were told that the deal was, quote, long-term pending an option on the deal. The contract does allow for Miro to work with New Japan Pro Wrestling and some independent dates, but prohibits other American televised ones. So, New Japan USA would be off the table, end quote. Now, that, to be honest, isn't super surprising. We've seen with these big names that have signed with AEW, whether it's Miro or whether it's Chris Jericho, Jon Moxley, even the likes of Cody and the Bucks and Kenny Omega and Brodie Lee, they've all mentioned that a part of their AEW contract is that they do have a clause in there that allows them to take certain outside bookings, specifically New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's just a case of they can't take any major televised North American promotions. That's it. And it's nothing too surprising. Like I mentioned, every big star in AEW basically has that deal. That's why the likes of Chris Jericho and Jon Moxley regularly have appeared on New Japan Pro Wrestling pay-per-view events like Wrestle Kingdom, etc. So that's just the situation there with that. So it's no different with Rusev and Miro, rather. And I think everyone kind of assumed that was the case, but it's always good to have some confirmation from the guys over there at Fightful. So what is the chances? What are the chances of Miro going over to New Japan and having a match in New Japan? Well, in one of his latest Twitch streams, Miro has teased making an appearance with New Japan Pro Wrestling. He mentioned and pretty much confirmed what Fightful said there, that his contract with AEW does not restrict him from working with other promotions. He said, quote, despite signing a contract, I am not restricted to AEW alone. While I am not going to name any promotions, I'll just say I'm allowed to work in different countries. Maybe a country where the sun rises. That's a hint at Japan, by the way. You just have to wait and see. So Miro also hinted as well, so not only has he said there, I can work the other promotions in other countries, maybe in the place of the rising sun, which is Japan. And if you're working in Japan, I know there are other promotions, but you're working for New Japan, aren't you? And he also hinted that wrestling in Japan was one of his lifelong dreams, something that he wanted to fulfill in the near future. He said, quote, sometimes when God says, Miro, you're going to live all of your dreams, you just have to keep the faith. That's why when I got released from WWE, I had zero doubt that I would be able to go to AEW and work in different places. And that's how things are unfolding now, end quote. So Miro basically there saying that not only from a legal point of view is he allowed to work with New Japan Pro Wrestling, but he wants to. And when those two things come together, historically, that means that a deal is going to happen. Now, I don't know when, where. Obviously, going over to Japan is difficult at the moment, especially considering he's got his dates with AEW Dynamite or Elite Wrestling, which are his primary focus. Let's be honest. I'm sure that, yes, he's allowed to work those New Japan days, but the primary focus of that deal and his primary focus when it comes to his dates in professional wrestling are AEW. They have to take precedence. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. And it's just interesting. It's very, very interesting. And like I said, Miro, he appeared on AEW Dynamite a few weeks ago. He went on to say that patience is also starting to pay off, and especially after a lengthy hiatus from the ring from WWE after he was released back in April due to those COVID-19 budget cuts, because remember that a lot of the people that were released by WWE back in April, as soon as their non-compete clause ended, they were straight back in the saddle, really. You look at the Good Brothers, EC3, Heath, Eric Young, they all made their debut for Impact Wrestling, I know, but pretty much the day of their non-compete clause expiring, whereas you had guys like Miro who just took their time, were patient, I don't have any information as to when this deal was put together. Fightful have said there that they were talking for a long time, so I'm sure feelers were definitely sent out in July when they were legally allowed to. So it's interesting there. But he said, patience is a virtue of this. He said, quote, "Things happen for a reason. And the more you let go of the BS, the more service you're doing yourself. If you're good and trust and believe, things will align themselves. You just have to be patient. That's what I did. I bided my time, and here I am now," end quote. So it's exciting. It's exciting. I think Miro is absolutely tailor-made, really, for New Japan Pro Wrestling, isn't he? I think I don't want to say strong style, because Japanese strong style, but you get what I mean. The physical nature of Japanese wrestling, I think, suits him to the ground. Historically, big guys, stiff, physical workers have done excellent in the New Japan territory, especially the foreign heel does very, very well over in New Japan. So whether it's, I mentioned before, Stan Hansen, Miro Brodie, I think Rusev could fit into there absolutely fantastically. So we'll have to wait and see with some excitement, to be honest. I think Miro appearing in other promotions that aren't AEW would be really interesting, because this isn't a guy that we saw on the independent scene and we saw go through all different promotions before he went in WWE. We've only truly, really seen him compete in WWE. So it's always fascinating, isn't it, when you see those guys that haven't really done a lot of independents or outside shows, when they do leave WWE and they go to another company or they work for other companies. It's just interesting to see them in that different environment and see really what they're capable of, because we know the shackles that you sometimes have when you're working for WWE, don't we? That is a fact. That is the nature of the beast there. That's how things work in that company. So him working in other promotions will be interesting, and I think him in a different environment, in that New Japan environment, which is completely different to any environment over here in the UK, would just be a lot of fun, and I think it'd be a fascinating watch. And I do think he would do very, very well. I think he'd have great success with New Japan. I really do. So it would be absolutely brilliant. And as I mentioned, he wouldn't be the only AEW wrestler to appear for New Japan. Support for Wrestle News 365 is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Now, Manscaped, for all of my UK fans out there, Manscaped just launched in the UK. Over here in the United Kingdom, we have gone for years and years and years without using the right tools for the job. But now you can be one of the first men in England to experience their life-changing product. But it's not just limited to all of the great fans over here in the UK. This offer goes worldwide, so all of my friends over in America and around the world that are listening to this offer still does apply for you. You can still use our code. But I've got to tell you a quick story first. Now, there have been so many times, right? I'm a guy. You gotta groom down there, fellas, right? That's the most important thing. You gotta keep yourself trimmed. You gotta keep yourself proper. And a lot of the time, I've been guilty of this, of using the wrong tools for the job. I've had incidences, I'm not afraid to say it, where things have been nicked, snagged, or in fact cut down there because I wasn't being careful enough and using the right equipment. Now that just shouldn't happen. That shouldn't happen. You don't want to be worrying about cutting yourself down there. Do you know how painful that is? I can tell you, it hurts quite a lot. And I wish and hope to God it never happens to me again, and it won't happen to me ever again, because I'm using Manscaped products. That's why Manscaped has redesigned the electric trimmer. The Manscaped engineering team has perfected the greatest ball hair trimmer ever created. Big statement, but it's absolutely true. They have just released the new and improved Lawnmower 3.0 in the UK. It's also available around the world as well. Their third generation trimmer features a cutting edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents. So those cuts and snags that I was telling you about before are a thing of the past. And let me tell you, when I tell you this is premium, I mean premium. The battery will last up to 90 minutes, so you can get a longer, perfect shave. And not only that, you don't want to be cutting yourself and trimming yourself all over the bathroom, getting hair all over the place. That's just disgusting. The lawnmower has a waterproof technology that allows you to groom in the shower, so no more mess. And one of the coolest features, one of my favourite features about the lawnmower is the LED light which illuminates grooming areas for a closer and more precise trimming experience. So you can shave longer, you can shave more precisely, and you can shave in the shower. What more do I need to tell you? They've also upgraded to a 7,000 RPM motor with quiet stroke technology, and let's not forget about the charging stand. You can show off your mower loud and proud because this intelligently designed stand is a convenient charging dock powered by USB. So, if you are listening to me speak right now, I want you to experience it firsthand for yourself. Let's get that bush to tush clean, and you can get 20% off and free shipping. Yeah, you heard me right there. 20% off and free shipping. All you have to do is use the code 365wrestle at manscaped.com. Make your testies their besties. That's 20% off and free shipping. Not only are you getting 20% off, you're getting free shipping as well with the code 365wrestle at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com, and use the code 365wrestle. Your balls will thank you. We know that Jon Moxley is still with New Japan. He's currently the IWGP United States Champion. However long that continues, I don't know, because obviously getting over to Japan for him is difficult. And I know people are saying, well, the G1's happening in Japan, guys are flown over. But if you fly over, you have to self-isolate and quarantine for 2 weeks. And then coming back over from there to the United States, you'd have to quarantine for another 2 weeks. That's a month gone. And people like Jon Moxley and Miro and Chris Jericho's another name, they can't lose a month because AEW needs them for a month. It's not like before, where before the world went crazy, when you can fly over, you can land, a couple of days before the event, get acclimatized, and then go straight back. That isn't going to happen in this case because there's such a long quarantine and such a long self-isolation process of going into another country at the moment, and rightfully so. I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all. If anything, it's the right thing to do. My point being, those guys that have flown over for the G1, they're New Japan guys, so they can stay there for 2-3 weeks. They can do whatever is needed, whereas guys like Jon Moxley, Chris Jericho, Miro, perhaps even Brodie Lee, if he got on board with New Japan, they're AEW guys first, right? It's their AEW contract that permits them to work for New Japan. So I can't see them flying over to the United States and having to potentially sit on the sidelines for a month or longer because AEW is going to need them. So that's when I think about Jon Moxley as the IWGP United States Champion. I wonder how long that's going to last. I know they're doing like tournaments. Was it Kenta that won the tournament? He's going to be facing Jon Moxley at some point, I think. So it'll be a fascinating match. When's it going to happen? Because like Miro said, and like in those contracts that Fightful mentioned about Miro's AEW contract, yes, they could have the match over in the United States, but the contract with AEW permits AEW wrestlers from having a televised match for another company in the United States. So it's very, very strange. It's very, very complex. I'm sure if AEW and New Japan wanted to, they could work out an agreement, but I think everyone wants a working agreement between AEW and New Japan, but it doesn't look like it's happening at the moment. There were rumors about it. I know there was videos of Chris Jericho saying he wanted it. Jon Moxley has gone on record saying he wants that working relationship between the two companies, but at the moment, there isn't one. I don't know if there's still heat with New Japan, with the likes of Omega and the Bucks. I know there was some friction about how they left the company. I mean, Kenny Omega last year, was it earlier this year, last year? This last 18 months, honestly, it's just a blur. But he had some trouble even flying into Japan, right? He got stuck at customs, and that was working for another Japanese promotion. Now, there were rumors and rumblings that had something to do with New Japan. I don't know, but it certainly was very fishy, wasn't it? Very, very fishy. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. But as I mentioned, Miro could join other AEW stars like Jon Moxley, like Chris Jericho, in competing in New Japan in the near future. It's an exciting time to be a pro wrestling fan because it does feel like anything could happen. Miro, yeah, there is a possibility that Miro could show up in New Japan and challenge the big names there. But again, I do think we have to be slightly realistic about the travel restrictions and how that would work right now. Again, I know you can go to Japan, but you have to look at the time factor of the quarantine, and I think that's something to consider. But let's think about who Miro could potentially face or even team up with in New Japan. So obviously he could do a match with AEW's Jon Moxley in New Japan. I don't think he will. I think that the thing with these American stars coming over, obviously Miro's not American, but with these guys that have made their names in America, when they come over, so when you have Jericho or Moxley come over, traditionally they go against New Japan guys. I know even when Moxley was facing off against Lance Archer, at the time Lance Archer was a New Japan guy. He was signed to New Japan and not anyone else. Same with Jericho. Jericho's worked with the New Japan guys, whether it was Kenny Omega, whether it was Naito, whether it was Evil, that kind of deal. Jericho's been working with the New Japan guys, and I think that's kind of the pattern that they're going to keep up with Miro, with Moxley. I know Moxley had with a match with Minoru Suzuki, so that's I think that's the pattern that they'll go with this. So I think Miro could potentially, Miro versus Tetsuya Naito, I mean, how awesome would that be? And people say, that's not going to happen, it's impossible. Why not? Miro's a big name, and you can discredit WWE as much as you want, and people can say how much they hate WWE and all that kind of jazz, but New Japan, if they can get their hands on a big WWE star, I mean, you saw what they did with Jericho, they'll do the same with Miro. They know that this guy's a draw. They know this guy's a star from his WWE time, and he's got the look, and he works how I think suits a New Japan territory. Why not put him in the main event against Naito? He doesn't have to win. Miro isn't going to become the IWGP Heavyweight and Intercontinental Champion. I don't think so, but you can draw a main event. If they were going to do the whole, Tokyo Dome deal, sure. Why wouldn't that be able to draw a main event? The same with going up against Okada. Why not? Why not? I think Miro versus Evil would be fun as well. That would be physical. I mentioned Jon Moxley versus Minoru Suzuki. Could you imagine Miro versus Minoru Suzuki? How unbelievable would that be? That would be incredible. Those two guys would just kick the living you-know-what out of each other, and I'd be there to see it. I'd be absolutely there to see it. Minoru Suzuki's arguably one of my favorite guys in New Japan. I just think he's just incredible. I think he's absolutely incredible. So physical and just so doesn't give a crap. It's fantastic to see, and I think that would be a lot of fun. I think a lot of fun to see Miro face off against Suzuki. What about this? This is a curveball. When I was making my notes for this video, this was a bit of a curveball that I thought could potentially be a little bit interesting. I mentioned, and I do mention them all the time, the likes of Stan Hansen and Bruiser Brody as a tag team or whatever in New Japan. And I mentioned another big man who did very well in New Japan was Vader. But you look at Hansen and Brody in New Japan, why couldn't you have like a tag team of Miro and Brodie Lee in New Japan? That would be a bit of a throwback in the sense of the foreign heel tag team with two big guys just beating the hell out of people. I think could be really, really interesting. Now, obviously, the issue with Brodie Lee, I suppose, in New Japan is that what he does right now in AEW is so sort of gimmick heavy, and that's no discredit to him, but it's the Dark Order, right? He's the leader of a faction, the cult of the Dark Order. When he goes to New Japan, does he carry that over? I don't think so, because they're so separate. When Jon Moxley goes over, he's not the AEW champion, he's the IWGP United States champion, and sometimes he even wrestles in different gear. Chris Jericho, when he goes over there, he's not really Le Champion, he's the Painmaker most of the time, he's a completely different character. So I think Miro probably would maybe try and do something a bit different. It's smart to keep those two worlds separate, and I think Brodie Lee would, but if Brodie Lee teams with Miro in New Japan, it kind of flies in the face of what's going on in AEW. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, because they're two separate worlds. It's like having two actors appear in a different movie, but they still appear in the MCU films as the Avengers. You get my deal kind of there. And I know people, whenever they hear the actor terminology when it comes to wrestling, their eyes pop out their head. But it's just an analogy, guys. So maybe they could do that. I'd like to see a Brodie Lee versus and Miro tag team rather in New Japan Pro Wrestling. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Obviously, other names he could face off against: Kenta, who's doing great things in New Japan since leaving NXT. I mean, this was a guy when he got released by WWE. He was on 205 Live, and then a few months later, at the closing of the Tokyo Dome at the Wrestle Kingdom, he's the final image posing with two championships, sitting on top of Naito. Kind of shows the rise and the stock of him right now. And then obviously Miro could go against other guys. Juice Robinson, he was a former NXT star as well, but I think he's done absolutely incredible things in New Japan. And then obviously you have to factor in Will Ospreay into that conversation, regardless of what you want to think about Will Ospreay. And I know that with everything that happened over the summer, it certainly soured some people on him. You can't discredit that he's a fantastic wrestler and a great athlete, but I do know that it's the same as a lot of those situations. The Ospreay situation is different. He wasn't like directly accused of anything like that. It was more of backing someone that was accused of it or facilitating someone that was accused of it. And I don't know, again, I don't really want to comment on it that much, but it certainly has left a bit of a bad taste in some people's mouth when it comes to talk about Will Ospreay and Bea Priestley. But if we just focus on his wrestling ability and his ability in the ring, he's obviously one of the best in the world. He obviously is one of the best in the world, and he's just returned as part of the G1 over the last few days. A match against Miro would be absolutely spectacular in New Japan, and I would love to see it. So there's a list of people he could face there, and who knows? I think Miro will eventually at some point land in New Japan. It's just a case of, does he wait and sit out the pandemic, or do AEW and New Japan work something out where their guys can do New Japan USA shows? We'll have to wait and see. But it certainly is an interesting time. So, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Miro potentially going to New Japan Pro Wrestling? Is that something you would like to see? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll be sure to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys on this channel. If you've enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button as well. Really just help us out here on YouTube, go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most important, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.